Welcome to another episode of the Team Superdad podcast. Today, we are talking with Kip Brooks, a empowerment coach, a youth leader, a dad, a husband, and someone who is on such the same wavelength as me that I just had to get them on to the Team Superdad podcast today. I'm glad that you can join us. I know it's going to be brilliant. Roll theme.
Welcome to Team Super Dad. Real dads creating their best lives ever. More time, more money, more fun. You are not alone. You're on Team Super Dad.
Hello, Kip. Good to have you with us. Really great to see you today, sir.
Yeah, so grateful to be here. I know we've tried this. We've been trying to get this lined up for a while, so I'm glad it finally worked out. I'm excited about this one. I love what you're doing. I'm grateful to be a part of this.
Oh, thank you very much. I mean, when we connected on Facebook, and then obviously you see each other's content, and there's just certain keywords that come up, and then pictures as well. So there was all sorts of words about empowerment. Then there was the work you do with coaches. Then I see you and your wife, is it Marina or Marianne?
Marina, yeah.
Marina are in so many of the pictures together, and then I listened to one podcast in particular about the difference between state and identity, and that just rang so true with me. And so I knew that the Team Superdad community and all the members of our Hero Academy program, I knew that they would love to hear some of your journey and some of the work that you do. So it's great to have you here today.
Awesome. Yeah. So grateful. Feel free. All those topics is everything I do. I love it. I can ramble on for days for it. So feel free to cut me off at any point if there's something we need to roll onto. But yeah, this stuff was a hobby of mine, and then became a hobby out of necessity. But then, then I figured out how to make it my vocation as well. So that's been awesome. So get to do this stuff day in and day out, teach my kids this. It's great.
Yeah, that's the ultimate part about self-development, self-awareness, empowerment. There's a lot of words that you can use to label this, and I think those words put people off sometimes because they're like, I'm a man, I'm a dude, I don't need this, I don't need that. And religion played its part hugely in days gone by, and in certain parts of the world, I dare say, across America, actually, religion seems to be has a stronger influence than perhaps it does in some parts of the UK these days. Not saying that's good or bad; it just sort of seems to be the way it is. But people would take a lot of strength and sort of a level of understanding and acceptance from their faith, and now people don't have that anchor. It's becoming even more important that we have that level of awareness and that access to self-belief, internal power, a force greater than what we've got to get ourselves out of bed. And so that's why, if you are someone who's listening to this and going, personal development, yeah, I've heard all this before, then I want you to stay tuned in, because every time we speak to someone new, we get their story and their journey, and it's in other people's stories that we can see something of ourselves. And hopefully that could be the difference. That could be the breakthrough. And you just said there yourself, Kip, not just for yourself, but for your kids. So tell us about your family. Or just sort of give us an intro to yourself and your family.
Yeah, so I live in Charlotte, North Carolina, on the East Coast of the United States, and I have my wife and my three sons live here. Three boys. They're 13, 10, 9. But the 13 and 10-year-old both have a birthday coming in November. And my 13-year-old is my they're all they've all been my experiment since I've been in this journey. But my 13-year-old is finally at the age where the seeds have really taken root and started to blossom, and I get to see that maybe I wasn't so crazy in the way I raised him. And he has his own fitness YouTube channel and Instagram page, and he's done a lot for trying to inspire other kids his age and even younger.
Oh man,
to,
that's brilliant.
to
Do you want
hold
to
a
share
positive
it here?
mindset and
Do
work.
you want to, do you want to share it here? Do you want to talk about it here? We could drop a link if you want to share it.
Yeah, I'll definitely get you a link. It's almost kind of heartbreak. He built his page to 15,000 followers in the last year during everything with COVID, and then someone reported him thinking he was too young, and so they shut down his page. So now we're battling to get it back. But he started a backup one right before it happened, so now he's rebuilding it. But he doesn't let it stop him. I think I shed more tears than he did over it because I was just blown away at what he had done, and he's had several other teenagers reach out to him, and tell him things like, "Oh, you've helped me out of depression." A couple even reached out to him. It was like, "I was suicidal, and I found your page and started listening to some of your lives and things." And that's been by far out of all the testimonials I've ever gotten from a student or client. Um, the when I've seen 15 and 16-year-old kids reaching out to him when he was 13, or he still is 13, but reaching out to a 13-year-old and saying, you saved my life. It's like that keeps me going. That's what gets me out of bed every day, because it's like, okay, he's getting it from the way I'm showing up. And if he's at that level now, if he's been able to impact some people already, when he's just figuring this out and figuring out who he is in the world, so he's really got a future ahead of him. And I can't
Yeah.
wait to see his legacy unfold. And then I've got two more right behind him. It's like, all right, let's keep it going. Like, um, help them tap into their gifts more, because that's my
Give me,
biggest thing with the kids, is trying to help them figure out who they are instead of who I want them to be. It's like, here's these tools, but I don't want you to be the next Tony Robbins or Caleb Maddox or any of that, unless that's who you are. It's like,
yeah.
I want you to be you and just learn how to use these tools to get you there.
And so,
And
what's his name? How can people find him on Instagram? What's his handle?
uh, his handle on his new page is Jaden Brooks. It's Jadon Brooks, Brooks, but he puts a second S on it.
Okay.
Because, let's say, his original page got wiped out and he's fighting to get it back right now. But I'll get you the link. If you have a challenge finding it, you can just go through my followers or the people I follow on my Instagram page, and it'll be there. But yeah, it's
That's the whole on the shoulder of giants, and as a dad, that's all we can. I mean, speaking for myself, but I do believe this is, talking about good dads that want the best for their kids. It's like, I take the best bits that my dad did for me and the best bits that my American family did for me, and I try and make them a little bit better, give them a bit more of that. I take the bits I didn't like and I try not to do that, or I learn from them. So my dad, we did get shouted at. We did get a few thrashings, and I'm like, okay, so I'm going to try not to do that. Or if I do shout at them, I'm going to explain why I shouted them. And if it went a bit too far, I'll apologize. I never got an apology from my dad, that's for sure. But just trying to instill that in them, and blimey, at 13, that's huge. I mean, I've shared with my boy Jago. I've shared my love for Bob Proctor and Jim Rohn, and Zig Ziglar, and if I'm selective with it, if I give them like a 10-minute, like, oh, listen to this, okay, but that's it. They're not going to do an hour on Audible, that's for sure.
Yeah, he's my two younger ones definitely need the cliff notes, and just I've had to figure out how to trim it down real quick. But my 13-year-old, he's at the level now where he'll, when he's cutting the grass, he's got headphones on and he's listening to an audiobook, or when he goes for a walk around the neighborhood, same thing, bike ride, whatever. He he gets through his homework and schoolwork so he can jump into studying a course or reading a personal development book. Or he finally got to the addictive phase, I guess.
Yeah,
It
nice.
finally took root in him. But even here, starting out, it's like I would listen to the stuff in the car with him all the time, and I do with the other two as well. I made a point whenever any of the kids are in the car with me. I would just have it playing, and it's like, even if they don't listen, consciously, it's like it's getting in there. And because I remember my parents used to listen to different talk radio shows or whatever when they were taking me to school, and I I was a kid. I had no use for them. I didn't want to hear any of it. I didn't like the talk radio. I just wanted to hear music. But it was better than listening to my parents like complain or whine or fuss or talk about whatever they were talking about. But I would just zone out and look out the window. But there's still, I remember certain stories would get in that these people would share. Um, uh, Even just little snippets of it, to where now it's like I don't even know what they were talking about. I just remember little clips of the story that stuck with me. And it's like I was in a rebellious phase. Um, and I was suicidal at 8 years old. I was depressed. I was angry. I hated my parents growing up. I was sure they hated me. So I was blocking all that out. And it's like anything that had to do with them, I was trying to block out. Like, just sitting over there just mad at the world. And it's like some of that stuff still got in, to the point I remember it 30 years later. So I was like, all right, well, if I can listen to some really positive stuff and just little snippets get in and plant a seed with them, you know, then they'll remember it down the road. And it's like I can keep building off of it. But it's like also, they don't, luckily I have a really good relationship with my kids. So anything I'm listening to, they're at least open to it. But I pick and choose which ones I play. Bob Proctor's a big name in our house. My kids actually call him the Turtle Man, because they swear when my oldest was probably like 9 or 10, we were watching something with him on it, and he's like, "He looks like a turtle." All right, so they call him Turtle Man. So if they hear him, they're like, "Oh, Turtle Man," they'll start listening for a little bit. But I'll make sure. A lot of times I'll plan certain audio bits, like Les Brown. You mentioned him before we got on. He's a great storyteller, right? And so I'll pick certain stories that I know will catch their attention, and then lead into a point or something, and I would just have that playing. And it's let's say my oldest be 14 here in November, and it's I've really seen him blossom, definitely over the last year. But kind of like the story of the bamboo tree, that's like they nurture the seed for 5 years in the ground before it ever comes out, and then once it does, it explodes. And that's really what he's been.
Yeah.
And especially this past year and a half has really shown that. So it's like, all right, because there were so many times people like, "You're crazy, kids too young, they can't, that's not going to get in, they're going to reject it, all kids rebel," especially at teenage years. Now here I've got this 14-year-old. I'm his hero in life, and actually he's mine, and he's out there doing amazing stuff. So
And that's
it's
such
worked.
an important message for anybody, is the journey of personal development, right? The self-awareness, empowerment, as we're talking about all these things. It's not about the first time you listen. It's not about the one person that you listen to. It's about hearing different people talk about the same things. It's about hearing those same things at different times, because you're going through different emotions. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, well, she didn't do that to me. She was just doing that. And I made it mean something about me, and then I reacted because of that. And if I'd have reacted a different way, she might have responded differently. And whether that's a social situation or a dating situation or a work situation, little things like that, like understanding I can choose how I want to be, or other people's actions don't have to impact me, or like these kind of moments of self-awareness. When you're a teenager, I can really see that trying to navigate the confusion, the being left out, the people talking about me, the am I tall enough, short enough, round enough, fat, like whatever the thing, have I got, have I not got? When you can have a just the slightest level of understanding from some of these people we've been talking about, or from personal development as a general subject, then the ability to hear those things or experience those things without taking them on board, without being mortified, depressed, and all the other awful things that happen to kids, eating disorders, self-harming, stuff like that. So we're talking about emotional resilience that is inspired by you as the dad, but you don't have to be the source of it. Like, he doesn't have to be dependent on you for that resilience. You've given him the tools. You've given him the knowledge to be resilient himself, basically.
Yeah, totally. And it's, I was pretty lucky with my oldest son, Jaden. He and I always had a fairly good relationship, but like I was sharing with you before we went live, that like, we overcame a fair heights together, and different things. So there was different places we connected.
So share about that. Share about, what did you do? What did you
Well, I had, so as universe has a sense of humor, and my dad was totally different than me, so he believed in immersion type therapy. But one certain situation with my dad, he he read the situation as I was afraid of heights, and he was standing on his platform with a friend of his, and he told me to come out, and it hung out over this edge on the Blue Ridge Parkway. Yeah, I don't even think it's there anymore. I've tried to find it, and actually just a couple months ago, and I couldn't. But yeah, it was this little platform with a metal railing around it that hung out, over the just over the edge a little bit, and wasn't very high up, but it gave an amazing view of the mountain range off in the distance. And I go walking out to it, and I see the metal is rusted, and I was like 5 years old. And so I saw the rust, and all I'd been taught about rust is that when metal is rusted, it's bad, it's weak, it's breaking. So I remember taking a moment. I was like, man, I see all this rust, so it's danger. But then I was like, well, two grown men are standing there, so it must be okay, and they wouldn't be calling me out if it wasn't. So I just kind of slowed my stride, and I started kind of stepping out a little easy, and all of a sudden he just looks at me. He's like, "Oh, don't be such a sissy!" And he grabs me by the back of my pants, like the waistband, and just hangs me out over the edge of the thing. He's like, "See, there's nothing to be afraid of." Sets me down, terrified from that moment forward, to the point where I couldn't.
So this is like
walk up.
you're like looking over a cliff edge, yeah?
Yeah,
Angry.
and like I say, like I consciously remember that it was not very high up, like actually from the ground. If he would have dropped me, I would have been fine. I would have rolled down the hill. It'd been kind of maybe scraped up a little bit, but I'd been perfectly fine. I'd done way more dangerous stuff than that. I had an older brother who was almost 5 years older than me. So I was always trying to live up to him and his friends. I was the daredevil, but it was just, being suspended against my will out there like that. I was freaked out. So then from that moment on, I went to an elementary school that was 2 stories, and I couldn't walk up to the second floor. And 4th, 5th, and 6th grade were all on the second floor. I would like plaster myself to the wall and just creep up it because I couldn't stand to look over a ledge from that day forward. Finally, as I got to be an adult, I figured out how to make it through life without people realizing, because as a boy growing up, middle school, high school, elementary, other guys find out you're afraid of heights, so you get bullied. My friends picked on me all the time. So I started figuring out ways I could hide it and avoid heights without people realizing it. So I never had to face it. And then finally, my son Jaden was he was about 4.5 years old, and I noticed that he went from this fearless kid to all of a sudden he started to be afraid of heights at areas where it made no sense. It'd be like climbing up on top of a chair or something. Nothing tall or anything. And I just knew, it just hit me. It's somewhere, intuition, God's source, something just hit me. And automatically I knew it was my fault. I was like, he's modeling me, because at that age, he was by my side all the time. His younger brother had just been born. They're almost 5 years apart. And so he had really clung on to me. And I made sure that he got plenty of attention, so he didn't feel shadowed by the baby being in the family and all that. But we always had a good connection. He gave me an excuse to be mischievous and live my childhood. Right, that's the whole reason I have kids. Is I get to do stuff that is immature if I do it without them. But anyway, cut the story short. I started noticing that, and I just remember that moment. It just hit me. I was like, oh man, he's modeling me. And I was like, I've got to correct it. I can't let him live in that same ridiculous fear that ran my life forever. So I didn't know what to do then. I just started my personal development journey, like really started digging into it. And so I just kind of went back to my dad's way of doing things and like forced myself to just pretend and behave like I was okay with it. And I was able to do it just enough to where I didn't wet my pants. And he would start actually breaking out of his shell because, like I say, he'd only been um, behaving that way for a short period of time. So it was real easy to get him over it and get him adventurous again and feeling good. But then as we were going through it, I was like, you know what? I really want to reach the point where I'm not faking this. I was like, I just saw the switch in him. There's got to be a way I can do it in me. I've just got to figure it out. So I kept working at it, and um, ended up taking him on the trip to Chicago, and we went into what used to be the Sears Tower, is now called the Willis Tower, I think. We did the sky deck thing,
Yeah.
and he ran right out to it. He was excited. He's looking out, and I was stepping out to it, and there was this older, elderly woman inside, and someone was taking her picture. And I said, she's like, oh, here, take it on this camera. And she's handing her another disposable. She's like, because this is the one I'm sending to Susie or whoever it was. And the woman reached out, grabbed it, and came back. And when she came back, she like hit me with her elbow, not hard or anything, but it was as I was stepping on the sky deck, and I just felt that, and I jumped it, and I almost slapped her out of just response. And I was like, all right, I'm a little too emotional and stressed out here. I was like, I need to do some more work. And this place was just packed. It was crowded.
Just for our listeners, the sky deck is like they like bolted it onto the side of the Sears Tower, right? So imagine you're at the top of the tallest building in the world, and it still is one of the tallest buildings in the world because
still 2 or 3.
These new buildings, they're the tallest because of their flipping weather poker thing at the top.
Yeah, they cheat.
This has got actual working floors at the top. So then they created this like platform that just sticks out at the top of the building, and it's all glass, and you go and stand on it, and you're looking straight down to the bottom, to the floor.
Yeah, it cracked. It like shattered it, and obviously didn't break and hurt anybody. But it cracked just like 2 or 3 weeks after our visit that year, and they had to rebuild it. I mean, if that would have happened, I'd have probably been done. But yeah, I was able to stepped out right on the edge of it. I never went fully in, but it was packed. I probably wouldn't have been able to see anyway because they had a really full day, and it was near. I think it was near Independence Day, July 4th or whatever, somewhere that week. So it was all of Chicago was jam packed with people. Not a great week for us to go, but that's just how it worked out. But
so that helped you overcome. That helped you overcome your fear.
Yeah, well, and then when we got out, I kept looking. I was like, man, I've done all this work. I've been working there for months. It's like it's like I got to figure this out. And I felt all embarrassed, but I was like, he didn't know. Nobody else around knew. It's all good. We get back down to the ground floor, and we're leaving, and we go to lunch. And he asked me in the car on the way, and he was like, Daddy, how come you didn't step out? And I almost cried. I was like, man, I didn't realize he noticed. He's 4.5. I thought he was so taken aback by everything there. I didn't think he would notice. And I got real honest with him. I was like, honestly, because Daddy's not as brave as you are. It's like I gave in to the fear. And he looked at me. But it was so cool, Daddy. Why didn't you come out? I said, I promise you, next time we come back, I'm doing it. And we went back. We weren't able to make it back for about 1.5 years. And we went back, and that was the first thing we did. And I walked out, enjoyed it. I've got pictures of, it was just me in there, cleared out the space, and lived it up. Now I love heights. But that when he checked in with me at the end there, that gave me that second little umph that was called in neuroscience pattern interrupt. Yeah. And that gave me something to move towards that was bigger than what I was moving away from. And so the fear got collapsed and enough by the desire of, okay, I can't live in fear. I've got to keep stepping up so he'll step up. That whole Marianne Williamson excerpt of, when you shine your own light, you unconsciously allow others to give permission to others to do the same. And I remind myself of that all the time with raising kids. I'm like, okay, I have to push through this terror barrier, as Bob Proctor calls it. So because if I don't do it, then they're going to learn to live small, and they're going to cower down and not
Yeah.
live their best potential. I say, so
So
I have to for them.
the subject of heights became more than the incident with your dad, which was
Yeah.
holding you back before. The incident when your dad was holding you back. And it wasn't until the goal or the aspiration or the, the opportunity for you as a father to your son and the legacy you were creating there, when that urgency, when that goal became more important than the fear or the pain you'd experienced with your dad, that's when you broke through.
Yeah. And then I realized after doing it, I was like, wow, I realized how much I'd been missing out on. So we started a thing that every time I was a traveling consultant at the time. And every time I went to a town, we started making it a thing. It's like we will seek out the tallest peak in this town, whether it's a building or a mountain. We're getting to the top of it. And we're going to look over the edge, and we've done it everywhere we've gone, and we've done it since then. And I've gone skydiving since then. Now I live completely on the opposite side of it. I love it. It's been amazing. It's been a blast. And
Oh, man, that's great. Well, listen, you've touched a couple of times on this journey, right? And there's two things as we move into the second part of this podcast conversation, this Team Super Dad podcast. If any listener is tuning in for the first time and wants to be more involved, more included in everything we're talking about, you can go to teamsuperdad.com/group and you can get in on us there. And we do have Kip with us here today. And so all Kip stuff is over at the Brooks Empowerment Academy.com. We'll talk more about that at the end as well. But if you're watching live, I'll drop that link in the description now. And if you're listening, then it is simply brooksempowermentacademy.com. So two parts of where we're going to take this now, right? And we do this generally in these kind of conversations where we're speaking to someone like yourself. One is the journey, the motivation. So we've got dads listening here. Part of the Team Super Dad promise is helping you, equipping you to create the life you desire so you can get out of the life you feel stuck in. And that's not dogging on our wife or dissing on our job or anything, but like so many men are just wandering around going, it's all right, but it's not great. And there's nothing I can do about it. And everything we're talking about today, as well as the skills and knowledge you have, but also your story in itself is you breaking out of that job, out of that career life, and turning into the Brooks Empowerment Academy and the work you do there, both with coaches and also with individual clients and stuff as well. And then how it affects our family and the opportunity we create for ourselves. So we've heard a little bit about your journey actually through the influence of talk radio, but that wasn't your first introduction to personal development or empowerment. I tell you what, before I ask that, let's just define empowerment. Like, why is empowerment important, and what is the definition of empowerment to you?
That's a great question. And for me, it's just creating a certainty and confidence in ourselves, right? It's when we're empowered, that's a lot of times with clients or students will break it into empowered. It's coming from the inside. I think so many people now, the way we were raised, and I was the poster child for this. So many of us look for external cues to know we're on the right path, or we're waiting to get feedback from someone else to tell us we're doing a good job. Most of us pick careers because we're trying to impress our parents or impress the neighbors or impress whoever. And when we're living to that, we're giving our power to them. We're letting others tell us our value or our worth, all of that. And when we turn it inwards and we get empowered, we don't need any of that. We're taking all our power back, and then we're delivering it to the world, and we're showing them what it is instead of waiting for them to tell us what it is. And doing that, it's freedom, because then it's hilarious. Again, I'll go to my 14-year-old, any one of my kids. I love it. Once in a while, a hater will pop up. It's the term on everybody's pages now is the hater. And most kids, especially at the ages they're at, when they get picked on or bullied or they hear something negative, especially from a peer, much less a group of them, it's detrimental to a kid. And all of ours laugh it off, because they know, like, because they're empowered. They're like, there's something in me that's triggering something in them. And if I keep going, maybe it'll help them grow. But either way, it's like, I know that it's only a reflection for them. They're not actually talking about me. And they just go on. Like, my 9-year-old, when he was 5, he was in kindergarten. I found out he was being bullied on the bus for like 2 months. And the reason it took 2 months to find out is because he never said anything. The reason he didn't say anything is because it didn't bother him. The way we found out is because one of the other kids on the bus was so tormented by it, by watching it, that he went home crying one day, and his parents asked him what was going on. And like, Lincoln's getting bullied on the bus, and oh my God, and so those parents called us. They called the school, raised all sorts of cane about it, and schools calling, apologizing. We're going to handle it. So I asked him, I was like, why didn't you say anything to us? He's like, about what? I was like, you were being bullied on the bus. He's like, when? Like, he had no clue. So I had to give him the details I had, and he's like, oh, he's like, I don't care. He was saying something about Pokemon cards. He's like, I love my Pokemon cards. He's like, because Jaden gave them to me, and it was like, he was just so certain about his why, of why he had them, what they meant to him. He didn't care what other people's view was of them. They meant the world to him, and it was just he's so sure of himself. And now that has backfired with trying to teach him once in a while, because he is very sure of himself. But I've learned how to communicate to him where he'll still be open and listen. But yeah, once he knows why he's doing something, he's on it. You sell him on the why, and he's good. I had to learn how to communicate to him. They're all 3 different, but there's so many kids in our neighborhood, and we've got a park in the middle of the neighborhood, and we hear about all sorts of different drama between different little cliques and friendship groups and everything. And our kids come home and talk about it, and they're never bothered by it. They're usually the ones fixing it. And that's awesome. And they usually have friends in all the groups because everybody's just drawn to them because they don't feel the need to impress everybody else. They're just themselves, and the kids are attracted to them because they're authentic to who they are, and it's amazing.
Kip, that is such an important message right at the end there, is that it is attractive. It's like that person that walks into a room and the room lights up, and I don't like because they're the loudest or the brightest or whatever, but people are just at ease around them. And sure enough, sooner or later, the kind of the room or the mood of the room will shift towards that person, and that's about who they're being, not necessarily what they're doing. So your kids have gotten this from you, right? What pushed you? Where did your personal development journey start? What was your early inspirations and mentors?
So I briefly mentioned earlier, I had my first suicidal thoughts or whatever at 8 years old, and so all through my teenage years and everything, I was in that depressive, dark state. And finally, my senior year, I had a teacher did a pattern interrupt and planted a new seed in me without realizing. He didn't realize what he was doing, and I definitely didn't. But finally, things started changing for me as I got into my 20s. And then when I found out I was going to be a parent, I was doing good then. I was established in my job. I had a house, and found out I was going to be a parent. And that just clicked something inside, and I was like, okay, I'm doing, by society standards, I'm doing well. But I was like, I know there's a whole lot of stuff in my closet that I need to get rid of and heal. It's like, I don't want to dress my kids out of the baggage I'm carrying around. It's like, I don't know how to be a parent. I don't know how to be a dad. I know how not to be one, but there's a whole lot of ways I don't want to be one. I was like, I've got to figure out how to be the one I want to be. So that really fueled it. Luckily, I had just been tampering and tinkering with personal development a little bit. I'd always been fascinated by psychology. Actually, my senior year of high school, I actually took 2 semesters of a psychology course and was really fascinated with it. So then I started actually going and seeing therapists and psychologists and stuff. And it was more about trying to understand like what they knew, and just I was using it more as education most of the time. I wanted to understand how the mind works. Um, and then I started reflecting on that teacher who just in a 20-second conversation um, created a pattern interrupt for me. And um, as I kept searching for answers, that brought me into personal development. Of course, I found Tony Robbins, but actually, it's funny that you brought up Bob Proctor, because he was the first one that I really just took to. Whenever I heard him, I'd
Yeah.
listened to Eric Thomas and a couple others, and I heard Eric Thomas actually bring up Bob Proctor. I was like, why does he keep bringing up? Who is this Bob Proctor guy he keeps talking about? And so I found Bob Proctor, and then he was able to say it in language that connected with me. And I'd heard him share it through story, and hearing his story. And, he started out as kind of the imbecile of his village or whatever, the idiot in his village. And, dropped out of school and went to trade school and everything else. And then finally figured it out. And so hearing his story, that really connected me to it. And then, of course, following him, that led me into Jack Canfield, Les Brown, and Lisa Nichols, and all these others, and Harv Eker. And then it just became an obsession. Once I got into that part, any of the teachers who were talking about our mindset and the power of beliefs and trauma and how to reprogram ourselves, that's when I became just absolutely obsessed with it. I deleted I remember I deleted 1,200 songs off my iPod, just wiped them all out. I paid for every one of them, deleted them all, don't have access to them anymore, don't know where to get it if I did. Just started downloading audiobook after audiobook after audiobook, or keynote speech, or anything I could find. And just started devouring this stuff. And then every time I caught myself saying, man, if I'd have known that when I was a kid, or somebody would have taught me that when, I was like, oh, wait a minute, I've got a kid coming. Okay, let me make a note about that. And then I would sit there and just kind of,
So here's a question.
figure out how to deliver it.
Why don't they teach us this in school? Why don't they teach us this in school?
That could be a touchy subject for some people, but my opinion is just the way our system's designed. The system doesn't work if everybody knows this, right? I think it comes from more of a scarcity mindset, right? Of if everybody's empowered and out doing their thing, then my thing's not going to be as established, right? The school system we live under, it was created for the Industrial Revolution, right? It was to get people to go in to these factories and things, and we still have factories, but not nearly as many. And the economy is actually thriving way beyond that and outside of it. But yeah, it's our entire school model is really obsolete. It's training people for a world that just doesn't exist. And I think part of it now is just the powers to be that can change it really don't know how to, because it needs to shift so much. But also I think there's still some of that wanting to keep people kind of just under a lid a little bit, under the thumb.
Yeah.
And it's really sad, because that's an organization, that's a system that we trust to grow and nourish young minds, right? And instead, so often we're actually stomping out their creativity, their self-esteem, so much of that. So I make a point to teach this to my kids. They're in homeschool now, and they weren't originally, but they are now. And it's actually, we make it part of the curriculum is this type of stuff. So
nice. And so what was your work before? You mentioned yours.
I've been everything from a dishwasher to a janitor to working on cars. But before I got into this last job I have for well over a decade, about a decade and a half, was in catastrophe management in the automotive field of dealerships or towns or whatever would get hit with severe storms like hail damage,
Okay, yeah.
hailstones. And we would go set up, handle the insurance claims, help get everything back to normal.
Get all the dents out.
Yeah, and without doing any paint repairs or anything, unless it's too severe. But yeah, I would go in with a team, sometimes leading a team, sometimes being a technician on the team. Just kind of depends on what time of that career you're talking about. But yeah, then the whole thing that ever got me into that was it's 100% travel. You know, it's you go where the storms are. So I've been to Europe. Yeah, so I've been to Europe. I've been all over the States, and been offered Australia and Africa, South Africa several times. And that was the whole reason I got into it. I met somebody, and that was in it, and he was telling me about all the travels he'd had, and I went in. I was like, I never got to travel. I was too poor growing up, so we never went anywhere. We didn't have vacations. We didn't go anywhere. So yeah, I found out about it. I was like, I went in, whatever I got to do, and I just started grinding and training and getting in the industry, and then never gave any thought if it was actually what I wanted to do. I just saw I want to travel, and that's where I went. But the way the world works is that, you know, with all the travel that brought, it really gave me a place to really practice these tools and things I was learning about mindset. Because, you know, sometimes I'd be thousands of miles away from home, not know anyone. I was in France. I don't speak French. No one in the village I was in spoke French. You know, I'm thousands of miles away from my kids, and it's like, okay, I've got to figure out how to make this work. I've got to figure out how to connect with these people, negotiate in a language I don't know, and they don't understand me. It's like I've got to figure out a way to communicate and connect, and I've got to make. I have to produce an income. I'm on 100% commission, and so a whole lot of stress going on. It's like I've spent thousands of dollars to get here, and you know I'd have to really apply all the mindset stuff I knew to be able to stay in a higher energy and not just collapse. Because I've seen plenty of grown men in that industry just break down in the middle of the day and just start crying and have to go home, like have a mental breakdown, because it's a lot of pressure. It's a highly competitive market.
Part of our subject is seeing a vision for your future that you're drawn towards, or you're experiencing a pain that you're not really enjoying and you think, I've got to change this. But then rather than going to pieces in that moment, starting to equip yourself and strategize to move forward, to move out of that and into something new. So you're learning all this stuff, you're absorbing it, you're feeling inspired and motivated by it. You're then questioning your job, your work, your career, and you're thinking, what can I do? Where can I take myself? How can I be closer to my family? How can I sustain us? Where can I make the money? How did that? Because a lot of men will be facing that kind of subject right now. They'll be having those kind of questions. It's not about what you went and created, even though you're going to tell us about that, but it's about the idea that you had the vision and you pushed far enough past the fear and the concern to actually make it happen. So what can you share a little bit about that process and some of the fears, some of the down days, and how you made it through to where you are today?
Yeah, that was I had so many mentors who tried to help me break through that fear sooner, and I held on to it like it was the holy grail. And a couple of them were finally like, you know what, I'm done with you. It's like Les Brown tells a story once. I think his mentor Mike Williams, Les was explaining to him once, man, I can't do it. I'm, you know, I was diagnosed mentally handicapped, and you know, I barely made it out of high school, and you know, blah blah blah. You know, I'm an orphan, all this stuff. I can't do it. Nobody's gonna listen to me. And Mike Williams said something to him that sticks with me all the time. He's like, "Fine, you argue for your limitations, you get to keep them." And he started walking off, and that gave Les Brown a pattern interrupt. And he's like, "Wait, come back! Don't leave me!
Yeah.
I didn't know you were actually gonna leave. I thought you were just gonna listen to me whine for a little while." But finally, yeah, I had so many things because I was very successful in that career, and I just had it in my head that it's like I can't leave this until I've built up something new to replace it. And what I noticed is one of the things that helped get me through, and I was actually just talking to, I was doing a training earlier this morning, and the same subject having to come up is, our, a lot of people think they're pessimists, and they're really not. Like our minds, at the basic level are trained and programmed and designed to find the negative in an environment first before it'll find the pleasure. And that's a safety thing. Number one prime directive over our subconscious mind is safety and preservation. Reason for that, if back in the caveman days, we step out of a cave and a bush moves, we needed to know, is that a predator that's going to eat me? Is it an enemy who might try to hurt me? Or is it food? Or is it just a breeze blowing through? Or is it a breeze just because it's a nice spring day? Or is there a severe storm that's about to blow in and that's a wind from it? And if I don't do something real quick, the cave's going to flood. We needed to be hyper aware of these negatives, these changes in our environment. So now we don't have to worry about saber-toothed tiger. We don't have to hunt our own food. We don't have any of that, but we have that same energy and programming in our mind that is looking for that saber-toothed tiger at all times, 24 hours a day. So whatever comes up in our world that isn't super happy and pleasurable, that becomes our saber-toothed tiger. So that's why we look at things, we make the same, make a mountain out of a molehill. That's exactly where it comes from, because we've got all this energy ready to switch us into fight or flight. If that's a saber-toothed tiger, a bear, or a dinosaur, whatever it is. And so whatever we see, perceive as negative in our environment, that's where the mind shifts all that energy. So even though it's just a bad day at work, or we're afraid of making the jump into a new career, a new position, our mind doesn't see it as, oh, I'm building this, and it's going to be a little, it's unknown, but it's what I really want to do. It's exciting. It doesn't see it as that. It sees it as saber-toothed tiger, and that's how all the energy comes up. That's how all the emotion comes up. And also, one other thing that really throws us off is the physical symptoms of emotion. See, whether we're excited or we're terrified, the physical symptoms tend to be identical. Our heart rate goes up, palms get sweaty, shortness of breath, hot sweats, cold sweats, any of that. And so we take it, and we've been labeled, or we have labeled it as something it's not. So a lot of times when something's actually exciting, we take it as fear. And because a lot of times those two things kind of dance hand in hand. We go ride roller coasters because they're exciting, but they're also scary. I go skydiving because it's still a little scary, but it's also super exciting. And I had heard a story once. One of my mentors, he's a voice coach, Roger Love. He shared with me. He was a voice coach for several celebrities through the years, but he also worked with Bruce Springsteen and a couple others, and he helps in preservation of the voice. And he shared a story with me. It's become rather famous, and it was Barbra Streisand is thought to be one of the greatest voices that ever lived, but she hardly ever did live performances because she had so much stage fright. And they were doing an interview with her, and they're like, well, tell us about the stage fright. She's like, oh, it's terrible. She's like, I just think about going on stage. My stomach gets in knots. I get butterflies. I get all nauseous. I get shortness of breath. My palms get sweaty, and I start shaking. And she's like, and then I throw up. And she's like, if I throw up, I know I can't go out because it's too bad. And so we cancel the show. You're talking to Bruce Springsteen, and he happened to say something that he throws up before performance. And the guy who was interviewing him was like, well, you're the boss. You're Bruce Springsteen. You've been touring for 30 years. He's like, how do you still get sick before going out on stage? And he's like, well, that's how I know I want it. He's like, that's how I know it means something to me. He's like, they're like, tell us about it. He's like, I think about going on stage. He's like, man, I feel it in my stomach. He's like, my heart starts racing. He's like, I get shortness of breath. My palms get sweaty. He's like, I start trembling a little bit. He's like, and then if I think about it enough, he said, I'll throw up. And he said, when I throw up, I know it's time to go. He said, that's how much it excites me, because I love it so much. Same exact symptoms. They're having the same experience, but they've labeled it totally different. And And there's several other performers who have similar stories, and but it's just that label we put on it. And when I heard that story about Bruce Springsteen, I was like, wow. So every time since then, I wish I would have had that story before my Fear of Heights journey. It would have saved me weeks and a lot of torture. But to this day, when something scares me, I'm like, no, this is exciting, and I just push through it. And it's become this thing where if something scares me, I have an innate desire inside. It's like I have to push through it.
So, so is that so? We're talking about framing there. So for someone who's looking at, they've got an idea, they're going to change their career, they're going to start a business, they're going to take this knowledge they've learned about personal development, or it could be any subject, and they're going to turn it into their new empowerment academy, as you've done. Recognizing that fear as a possibility, like it could be fear, but I could also be really excited. And so it becomes a framing exercise where you're saying, I'm not going to call it fear, I'm going to call it excitement. And now if I call it excitement, instead of thinking I better watch out, you start to think, well, if I have that, I could see more of my family. I could spend more money. I spend more time at home. I could still create the same money. In fact, I could make more money. So if I'm spending more time at home and I'm making more money, I'm building for my future. Okay. And if I'm building for my future and I'm excited by that and I'm raising my profile and I'm increasing my confidence, oh my gosh, I'm going to be an even better dad and husband. So we're turning the excitement, we're turning the topic from fear to excitement. And then we're building on that excitement to see, and then to until it completely squashes the fear and turns it into motivation. Is that the kind of essence of empowerment there, really, as we're talking about it?
Yeah, and it's like really just to even get the ball rolling, so to speak. Like whenever you feel yourself have the limiting beliefs coming up or any of that, and the fear's kicking in, just stop. You're like, is this a saber-toothed tiger? And it sounds silly, but it's like it'll break that pattern just enough to where it's like, okay, no, when it starts to put it in perspective, it's like, okay, then if it's not something that can eat me, it's like, is it really that scary? You know, and it's and it'll settle us. And I use this to this day, and everybody I've ever taught it to, when they say it's like, hey, you do notice a shift, like automatically. It's enough of a release, and if it is silly, great, because guess what? When you do it, it actually makes the idea of fear seem a little silly to you. It's collapsing that anchor a little bit. It's what it's called in neurosciences. The fear's anchored in that fear response. So if you start attaching a silliness to it, or any other thing, whether it's excitement or whatever, but in this case, silliness. So if you feel silly, asking yourself that, awesome, do it more, because every time fear comes up, you'll start to laugh at it. And I know it sounds ridiculous, but if you'll apply it, you'll notice it. And I can pretty much promise you that the first time you ask yourself this, when there's a fear situation going on, you'll notice there will be a shift. Even if it's not from the question, just having the awareness that fear is going on and that you can stop and ask yourself a question calms the mind down enough, because fight or flight is about, okay, I've got to go, or I've got to fight right now in this moment, because there might not be a moment after this, because this tiger, this bear is going to eat me. But if I have the time to stop and ask myself a silly question, then obviously I'm not threatened that severely. And if I'm not threatened that severely, because that's all the mind is caring about, is keeping us alive. That's its number one prime directive. So once it knows that, there's no harm of death in this immediate moment, it chills out. And from that place, then we can kick into logic. Then we can hype ourselves up. Then we can start moving in. Because fear is just the emotional side anyway.
You basically opened a door. You've opened a door to a new situation, and now you're like, right, I've got a new room here. What am I going to do with this room? Great tips and tactics there for people with anxiety issues as well, is to reframe the anxiety, change the color, turn the music down, or play some cartoon music over the top, and not to belittle anxiety issues for people, but the reality is they're in our head, as rightly you're saying. Is there a saber-toothed tiger there? Is that anxiety real, or can I go somewhere and find some power over it?
Yeah, absolutely.
So what I saw on some of your pictures, you were doing a board break with your wife, and one of the pictures on Facebook. We do that in our firewalking events and things. What's some of the work that you do with clients that, like, as a practical way to access empowerment, or as a practical way to shift their mindset?
Yeah, that's board break is always a big hit. And actually, I think the picture you're talking about is actually a youth empowerment camp we did. We I keep a series of different thicknesses of boards, and so my kids' friends, they love coming here more than they love my kids coming to their house, because the first time you're here, it's like we do a board break. That's kind of how you get christened into the club here, into the tribe. So, and we'll do a lot of times, we'll have the fire pit outside and then burst marshmallow and stuff, but we don't do a fire walk yet. I want to get the certification, but so I'm the only one in the house that's experienced that. But we do what we call a fire stomp. So we've modified it and light some leaves on fire, or a piece of cardboard or something for a strip like 3 feet long, and have them walk across and stomp it out. And then they get to the end and they'll do the board break. And but yeah, I take that up to, we do board breaks and even arrow breaks with clients in live events. But if I'm working with someone virtually, first thing I teach is anchoring, and it's a lot of what we've already kind of danced around and talked about. And with anchoring, you can quite literally install a button, so to speak, on your body that is connected to the neurology, and it'll elicit whatever state we want. So Tony Robbins was really big about talking about this and teaching this, especially in the 90s. He brings it up once in a while now, but anchoring, it can be on your knuckle. You could just think of every time you've had a success, or every time you've been really excited, or every time you've been motivated, or any of those high energy states that you would want to elicit at any given time. You just think about it, and as soon as you feel the emotions start coming up, you just start pressing on your knuckle. Some people squeeze their ear. Some people just will dig their fingernail into a place of their finger. And just think about it. As soon as you feel the peak of the emotion go down, or start to go down, once it peaks, you just release. And then you think of another time and another time, and you keep putting it back in that same spot. And it's called a stacked resource anchor. You can also do it simply by staring at a place on the wall, or listening to a song, or Byron, I can't remember his full name, but he was a Lakers. He was really good for the LA Lakers, professional basketball player in the 90s. And actually, Tony Robbins worked with him. And his anchor was, he would say in his mind, boom, every time he took a shot. And he would anchor in making the shot every time he said boom. And it actually shifted his career almost overnight. He'd been missing everything, and he'd become a terrible player. And he's like, man, I lost my game. And he was going to get canned, fired from the team. And he worked with ESPN, I think it was, challenged Tony Robbins, like, at the time, because Tony was going around poking everybody's buttons. He's like, I'll fix what you can't fix, type thing. And so they called him out. They're like, you think you can fix this guy before tomorrow's game? He's like, absolutely. And he went in, and that's all he did was he took him back. He's like, think of every time you sank a 3-pointer, every time you made a shot. He's like, all right. He's like, now just think of that and say boom. Think of that and say boom, over and over. And then he's like, all right, now get the ball. And he'd shoot it, miss. He's like, all right, this time when you go to shoot it, say boom. And he'd say boom, and he made it. So then he would anchor that in. And it's really that simple. Like, we just sit with it. If you haven't experienced it, do it synthetically. Just think of what it would feel like to achieve whatever state you're wanting, whether it's a major, you just landed a huge sales contract, or you just graduated university, going back to school, whatever it is. It doesn't matter. It's a weight loss goal. It's whatever it is. Just think of, because that's what we're really wanting to get to, is the emotional state that'll give us the achievement of it. And this is actually doing two things. It's future pacing it, so this helps with anxiety as well, imagining that successful outcome, but it's also locking into our neurology. And the more times we do it over and over, and it just takes seconds each anchor we install, the more times we do it, the more it's stacking that resource anchor. And like I say, it can be imagining when I'm doing live trainings, we do one that's called Ring of Power. And you just imagine having a ring on the floor that you're visualizing all that energy or emotion or state in, and you step into it. And then when you're all done, you can imagine shrinking the ring down and putting it on your finger or, whatever, and carrying it with you. And whenever you need it, you just imagine tossing it out on the floor and stepping into it. A lot of speakers do that. But it can be anything. Say spots on the elbow, anywhere on your body, or anything unique. Just something. If you do something on your body, you want to make sure like it's not in an area that someone else could accidentally set off. Like first example would be someone tapping you on the shoulder or something, which that's not very comfortable. Really set an anchor on yourself back there. But or some people would do their hand like in this area, and it's like, well, if someone hits that, shaking your hand, and you've anchored in excitement, or I've given people anchors for laughter when they really need to just laugh hysterically. You can do that. It's like, well, you don't want to fire off an excitement anchor or a laughter anchor if you're at a funeral. It's contextual, like when you're going to want it. So you want to make sure that it's something that someone else can't set off accidentally. That's the only thing. So just make it a unique place if you actually use the button. But like I say, it can just be a word that you say inside your mind. So
I
you
love
can
that.
say it and no one's around,
Yeah.
It's amazing.
I've used it in anger management.
Yeah.
Because like you say, that wave of emotion, and it's just a connection, like, okay, no, I've got a bigger purpose in this, or this anger doesn't serve me right now. There's a lot of love here, or it's like, where am I venting this? Okay, no, I need to anchor myself and put it back. Well, so we just hit the top of the hour, Kip, and we generally keep these sessions to 60 minutes. The work that you do, right, at the Brooks Empowerment Academy is mainly stateside, I bet, although there's probably a fair amount online as well now. What do people get when they come and work with you guys?
And then our main thing everybody comes to us for is I sort of followed in the steps like Dr. Richard Bandler and Tony Robbins, and I would get asked to do presentations and things at different seminars or groups, and I kind of did the same thing they did. I was like, "What do you have? Come on up. Let's do a demo and let's get rid of it, whatever it is." And that was on paper, that's probably the dumbest thing I could have done, but it got me really good at. By that point, I knew the mind inside and out really well, and I understood how this stuff was installed. So I was like, okay, I know how it's installed, and I know if I know that, I know how to uninstall it. Simple as that. And so the way Brooks Empowerment was birthed, really, what we're doing now with this coaches mentorship is because I never actually wanted to teach coaches or anything. I just wanted to help people, and I always saw that as a one-to-one thing or a good coaching thing. And then I was asked to do a presentation and had several demos, and one of them was a girl named Melissa. She's my protege. She's actually kind of surpassing me in a lot of ways now, which is beautiful. I love it. And she had an anaphylactic allergy that had almost killed her several times, and had actually left her legally dead once for more than 5 minutes. And she had walked around with it for 21 years. And in a 20-minute session as a demo, we got rid of it, and she's good to go now. And a lot of people start reaching out. It's like, how did you do that? Like, I've had some of the same trainings you had, and I don't know how to do that. And so as we started like dissecting, long story short, we just figured out it's like most training institutes that teach any of this stuff, for one, you've got to go to several, because I've been to every one I've found just about, it feels like. But also the whole time they're teaching you, they're also saying not to take on severe cases, and they're installing fear, kind of like the school model we were talking about. Doesn't teach empowerment. And I realized that one day, I was like, Man, that's horrible. And that's out of integrity, in my opinion. So I was like, I want to change that. I was like, because there's nothing special about me at all. It's the only thing that makes anything happen is the client believing what's possible. Um, so yeah, we completely threw out basically everything we were doing, almost completely stopped doing one-on-ones. And so we've got to start teaching other coaches how to do this. And because everybody needs this, everybody needs to know how their mind works and what they're really capable of. I've helped people get rid of epilepsy, vertigo, PTSD, all sorts of phobias, limiting beliefs, whatever. And even vitiligo, the skin condition, so many different things. And and so that's what we start teaching, is working with coaches and healers and even doctors and things, teaching them how the mind works and how to get in and actually work with the programming that's there and different techniques. We created one specific technique that kind of takes care of everything, but also teach a couple other little like booster techniques, and a lot of it's founded out of NLP, so we teach that as well. But then we just mentor the our students, because one thing I didn't like about a lot of programs that's out there is like they'll teach you, they'll certify you, and then you're on your own. And so you've got all this time with them, but it's only when you're learning the material, and you don't ever get any real world experience, and then get to come back to them unless you pay for something more. And it's like, I want to create something where we'll teach it to you, you run out and use it, and you come back, and then we'll talk about it, and as you experience real world things. And a lot of our students would schedule their new client calls for the day after or the later in the day of our weekly call. And it's like, hey, I've got this client. Here's their feedback form of everything they've got. It's like, this is what I was thinking. And what it's doing is it's giving our students, the coaches, they get to show up just feeling really confident, looking like they absolutely know what they're doing. And before we send them, allow them to, like really take these techniques to clients, they know what they're doing. But it's they get to show up totally different because they feel like we're all coaching their client together. And it's been amazing and transformational. So we keep moving more into that just mentorship. It's like, come to us with what you got. We'll teach you how to use it better and actually how to add a couple of things to it. And the more you understand how the mind works, it really opens up the doors of human potential and possibilities. So.
I love that. Empowering others to make a difference, which is exactly brings us back to the top of the conversation, where you are empowering your children to make a difference, and particularly Jaden with his lives and his Instagram. So I'm just going to bring that back up as well, at Jaden Brooks with a double S on the end. And you are everything over at the BrooksEmpowermentAcademy.com, and of course Kip Brooks on Facebook, on LinkedIn. People can come and find you through all those normal channels.
Yeah, absolutely. Reach out to me with any questions. I love this stuff. I'll talk about it for days. Even if you think I'm a quack, you can feel free to let me know that too. Totally have no challenge, no issues with being challenged on any of my beliefs or thoughts. So.
Yeah. So I really appreciate your time today, Kip. It's been a pleasure to hang out and get to know each other better. I hope this has been of value and interest to the people listening. Join us if you want to make sure you get all the podcasts. Basically, don't miss a single episode. Come on over to teamsuperdad.com/get podcast, and you can literally subscribe. That's how subscription works. Okay, you won't get missed out. So until next time, Kip, I'm sure you and I are going to speak more personally on a one-to-one level, and I really look forward to that. Thanks so much for sharing your story and your time with us today.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I really love the work you're doing. I'm grateful you're out there doing it. It's definitely needed. And look forward to all our conversations, and come back anytime.
Great stuff. I'll see you on the other side. Team Superdad out. Bye.
This has been Team Superdad. Find us at teamsuperdad.com. Join the program and create the best life ever for you and your children. You are not alone. You're on Team Super Dad.